Okay. All right. So, hello and welcome to the Enterprise Java Newscast, episode number 39 for January 2018. And this is our first episode of the new year. So, hello, everyone. Happy New
Year.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm here with my venerable co-hosts, Ian Hlavats and Daniel Hinojosa. Hey, guys.
Hola.
Hey, Kito. Hey, Daniel.
So how are you guys doing? It's it's so weird. Like in some ways it's a very new year. In some ways it feels like January's been kind of taking a long time to pass. So
yeah, that's right. No, everything's going great.
Things are good. Things are good. Had a busy January. Not much rest. Around the beginning of the month, just pushed out a new release with on this project I was working on. So that took a lot of time and effort, but very satisfying. Getting things done for sure. And just still same as usual, drinking from the fire hose, trying to keep up to date on everything, as you guys know. So how were your holidays, guys? Did you do anything interesting?
I didn't really. I just hung out at home, and my family visited. They usually visit around holidays, so so that was nice. Nice and stressful at the same time. And but actually, probably the most interesting thing wasn't really the holidays. It was just the weather. On the east coast of the U.S. has been like crazy.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I just got back to Spain. I was in Canada for the holidays for a month, and I learned something new, guys. You'll be proud of me. I memorized a Fahrenheit temperature, so I can now. If you tell me it's this temperature in Fahrenheit, I'll know exactly how cold that is. Which
That's
coincidentally,
cool.
As a Celsius guy, it's a bit of a stretch for me, but I'm working on it. And interestingly, this temperature is the same in Fahrenheit and in Celsius. Did you guys know? -40.
I did not know.
That's how cold it was where I was.
That's kind of close to the 32, which is significant because I think what is the 32 is 0.
Yeah, 32 Fahrenheit is 0 Celsius.
Right.
But -40. Was it -40
with
where you were?
Yeah. It was -40 with the wind chill. I was.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was quite intense. We went to see a hockey game, our local NHL team, and walking back to the car was like, wow, this is cold. Like wind whipping you, and like very very cold. Actually, I was not dressed for it, but I learned -40 Celsius and -40 Fahrenheit are exactly the same temperature. So got to experience that.
Well, see, this is why I have a hard time converting, because it's not. I don't know what the formula is. It's not a very obvious formula.
That's it. Yeah.
The what is interesting is that I was having a conversation about temperatures, and the Celsius is water-based, whereas Fahrenheit is human-based. So it's human comfort level is what Fahrenheit is. If it's 0, a human's going to be really cold. If it's 100, a human's going to be very hot. Whereas for what is it, 100 Celsius, a human's going to be dead.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, that's no, it's a good point. I mean, it's more. I've heard that explanation before too. It makes sense. Like, get used to the numbers based on your body temperature or comfort level.
Right.
I guess like that's it. 0 is freezing. 0 Celsius is freezing. 100 Celsius is boiling. So I mean, it's based on the water, what behavior of water.
And it's kind of interesting that they chose a compound instead of an element for the temperature gauge. And since we humans are mostly carbon, right? As to why the temperature was not set against carbon instead of a compound called water.
Well, because water is sort of a ubiquitous thing that's been around forever.
Yeah, I guess so.
Probably before we even knew about like what it was made up of. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I did want to.
So I'm looking at it here.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, plus, if we were to gauge the boiling point and melting point of carbon, it is 3,825 Celsius or 6,917 Fahrenheit to boil carbon.
Wow.
Yeah. So that temperature gauge would just be nuts.
That would be a little crazy.
nuts.
Indeed.
Wow, amazing.
So, did you do anything fun for the holidays?
Me?
Yeah, go ahead. Either one of you.
No, I watched. So actually, good funny story is that my mom came over and she said, "I've never watched Star Wars. Can you show me?" And
No
I'm like,
way.
Oh,
and I'm like,
wow. Wow.
yeah, I'm
Cool.
like, yeah. So it's amazing. I got sick of Star Wars. I've never crammed so many damn movies in 1 week than that week.
That's
I was
epic.
like, "Geez, give me Star Trek, will you?" And it was just, it was pretty amazing. Then we went to go watch The Last Jedi.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
How many did you actually get through all of them before that?
yeah.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
impressive.
it was rough.
Did
And
you watch them in release order, chronological order,
ooh,
or
that's a great question. So I was trying to think. You know what? Those first three, or episode 1, 2, and 3, just well, I love episode 3, but episode 1 and 2 are just
yeah?
horrible. And I didn't want to start
I
off
mean,
on a foot.
Episode one has the Darth Maul battle scene, which is a redeeming scene.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, young Anakin, we could fast forward that, and then early, adulthood Anakin in episode 2. Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it's an interesting backstory.
I mean, it had to happen, but like, I can't stand teenage Anakin.
Yeah,
he cries a lot. He's angry a lot.
Yeah.
And most of the time, all those fits are unwarranted. But
yeah,
I guess I was like that as a teenager. I guess I just didn't want to see it. And but episode 3 is great. It's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
So I decided, let's go with 1977. Let's go in chronological order.
Nice.
And it was more confusing for her, and it was a gamble that I had to take. And so
it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Different ways
And I realized later I shouldn't have been so hard on her, because we finally went to go watch The Last Jedi, and Luke comes out. I'm not going to give anything away, but Luke comes out, and she tells me, "Is that Anakin?" And I'm like, man. But I'm just like, look, all this is in a week, and for me, it took years to saturate all the characters, think about subplots and blah blah blah. I'm not going to be angry that she still can't tell the difference between Luke and Anakin, but that's the way it ended up.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you saw it too. That's awesome. And do you guys have those theaters where you live, Daniel, where you can actually go in, buy some beer, order some food, sit down in a nice a leather armchair with like reclining?
So in this one, I don't think they had beer, but yeah, we watched it in a D-Box IMAX.
Yeah.
And where the chairs move and we recline, and
cool,
nice.
Stereo sound, all that. Yeah, that was
that's awesome.
Yeah, we did it actually the last couple of years. When my family is in town, we've gone. I think it's largely because my brother doesn't live in the States; he lives in Moscow, so he's not going to get the Star Wars movies as quickly,
unless they're the black market and Russian black market.
Well, yes, there's always.
I hear you've not
iPhone
seen
edition, right?
What's that?
The iPhone edition where the guy walks in front of the camera.
That's right.
Who's that? What happened there?
Imagine like Russian black market Last Jedi. I hear you have no new movie from Star Wars. I sell it to you for 100,000 rubles. Rubles, right? Yeah. Awesome. How did he see it, or he did not see it yet?
Well, he was visiting, so we went to see it.
Oh, excellent.
But it didn't. There's only one theater around here that has like beer and stuff. It's like more of a dinner sort of movie place.
Okay.
We just went to like a normal IMAX 3D place. So
sweet.
So awesome. Best thing about going back to Canada, it's like the craft beer market has just boomed. And everywhere you go, there's like great bars with craft beer on top, and you can go order a pretty decent meal at your seat in the theater. There's table service. They come up to take your order. They come back.
Nice.
It's like, this is epic, guys. I was in Amsterdam a few years ago, and you can order a grolsch and a popcorn and go sit in your seat. And I thought, this is the best thing ever. And then I go back, and it's like, you guys are doing this now. So I was really pleased.
I don't know, grolsch and popcorn. That's a nighttime of horrors for me. What's that? All that.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit of tech.
Yes.
I was going to say, tech in terms of actual work. What have I been doing this year? I think I've been on. There's just sort of keeping going different projects. I'm actually doing some Prime Phases upgrade work.
Cool.
Nice.
And just from like Prime Phases 3.5 to 6.1, and then also some Angular stuff and some web component stuff. But I'm actually right now I'm getting ready to teach a Java performance course next week. So
nice.
I'm like going through all my materials. I haven't taught this course in a while. I'm like trying to make sure I can actually run Visual VM and.
But the thing is, everything is new garbage collection. Everything changes with each subsequent version, and so we're at Java 9 now.
Yeah, and I'm actually not really covering Java 9 because this client's not using it yet.
Okay.
But I will mention a few things like that G1 is the default now and for the garbage collector and things like that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I like about Java 9 is that they've consolidated a lot of the utilities. There's like all these different little utilities that have overlapping functionality, and I think they cleaned it up in Java 9.
Yeah.
So that I need to get a better handle just so I can say exactly which of these tools am I covering will not be around in Java 9. So fun stuff like that.
Are all of you running by default now on Java 9, or are you still Java 8?
Yeah, I think I'm still Java 8. It really depends on the client, though. I mean, but yeah, I do like a lot of stuff in Java 9, though. So,
yeah. Okay.
What have you been up to, Dano? Have you started your touring yet? Or are you
no. Well, I had one class over in San Francisco, and that's been great. And I'll let you in on my secret, and for all the listeners, when I go to San Francisco now, I think I have it all planned out. I have a direct flight to Oakland from Albuquerque, and I stay in Oakland near the shore, and at a hotel near the shore, and then I take their shuttle over to the ferry. And so my morning commute is beautiful. We go under the bridge. We're on the water. There's no traffic in the water. And we just land, and I just walk to my client place. What a great place. What a great way to get started over there. Now I don't mind San Francisco.
How long does it take to get there?
It's 30 minutes across the bay.
That's not bad.
Yeah. And they have a little breakfast. You can get a coffee there. You have your own seat. You're not cramped up. You don't have to stand up, and unless you want to. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So I had one gig there, but nothing's really going to kick into action until February.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so this year, if we're doing our New Year's, it's mostly going to be big data is where I'm going to be focusing my time. Got some machine learning going on. Spark is going to probably be a greater center of my interest, and a lot of these technologies. Probably we'll get into TensorFlow sometime later down the year, and that's where I'm going to be. That's where I'm going to be this year. A lot of statistics learning. It's just nuts. All these things that I thought as a naive kid I would never have to learn, because why would a programmer need to learn these things? And I need to put my foot in my mouth now. It's just embarrassing.
Well, the way I look at it, and unfortunately I'm not as hip as you. I don't have this like concrete like 2018 plan. But I do machine learning is definitely a part of it. And just basically machine learning and deep learning. And for me, it's much more about I know, I mean, I took statistics. I know I'm not a big math person, despite being a computer science person. And I remember actually I started taking an AI class in college. And it didn't take me long to drop the course because it was all math. And I'm not a math guy. So I was like, I don't want to take a math, I don't want another math course.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it now is that it's now actually accessible to people who are not like,
Right.
data scientists, who
Right.
aren't like super math people. So it's a lot more about understanding what the APIs are and how they work and how you can use them for what you want to do. And that I'm totally down with. So I
Right.
actually, I've been sort of looking at different things. I actually found this really cool podcast series. I'll have to add to the show notes. But it's basically sort of goes through machine learning like in a step-by-step process. So I've been doing that because podcasts are a good way for me to sort of passively pick up on things.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys hear about this world's first graphical AI interface? Talking about machine learning without the math. It kind of reminds me of your audio hijack tool, Kito. I'll put the link in the notes, but they basically created this like honeycomb style like graphical interface where you can connect different machine learning algorithms together and create your own AI implementation, I guess.
Is it from IBM?
It's called what is this thing called? Cognitive Scale and Argo designed it, and it's called Cortex. Different. Cortex.
Okay, yeah, that sounds interesting. Add to the notes, please. I think also one of the things I want to get into, and this is much less of a something that's going to actually pay my bills, but I'm really interested in robotics, and I'm totally clueless about them. I've missed like all these years of becoming a robotics expert or anything, but I've gotten my kids interested, and I'm interested. So, and every time we go to any conference these days, I focus on machine learning and sort of kids/robotics sessions, things that I don't do that often. So I'm going to start sort of playing with some robotic stuff, seeing what I can do with like their Raspberry Pi or some of these kits out there, and then integrating those with machine learning services.
Nice.
Because you can actually have them, you can ask whether it's IBM or Amazon Web Services, you can say like, understand the intent of what this person's saying, and then you can do stuff with that. So the APIs they built on top of the stuff is really amazing. So
wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, so I definitely want to do with that. Work with that. That's some of the new exciting stuff. I'm going to continue working with web components and Polymer, and I really, it's been fascinating sort of watching all that grow. I think 2018 is going to be a big year for web components in general. And I'm also going to continue working with Angular and the Prime products, Prime Faces, Prime NG. I'll probably will start working with Prime React as well, so I can just provide good support across the whole spectrum of the Prime tech projects. So
okay, excellent.
That's pretty much it for me.
All right.
What about you, Ian? What are you up to in 2018?
That's a good question. A lot of it is more of the same, but definitely have some milestones on my list that I hope to reach. I'd really like to get more proficient at reactive programming. That's one area I need to really get my head around, and functional programming, and also, just looking at different ways to apply like this Redux pattern I've been using lately. Turns out there's quite a few implementations of it I started using one for Swift 3, and I'm using one for Angular TypeScript. And so that's like a really cool. Yeah, it's
I
a
hadn't
really
thought
cool
of
way.
using it with Swift. I guess it's because I'm a Swift newbie.
What's a Redux pattern? That's weird.
The Redux pattern, it's a state management pattern for user interface applications. So MVC talks about the model view controller, but it doesn't really talk about how do controllers share the model with each other very cleanly. And with the view, yeah, you have the interaction in the view, and that triggers an event that the controller handles and then does a model update and maybe pushes a new model back to the view. But what if you have multiple controllers and you want to share the state across the controllers? For example, you know, a typical scenario, you have a restaurant web page, you click add to cart, and then in the top right corner, you have this food item that just got added to your cart. How do you communicate from the menu to the shopping cart component, right? So Redux introduces this state management pattern or architecture, if you will, where you centralize all the state in your application, and you have what they call a store that holds all this state, and it's user interface state. It could also be data that you fetch from an API call, but it's also the state of your UI, like which items are selected, which menus options have been chosen, and those kind of detail, the user information. So you store all your state in the store, and then you have observers, and you observe the store. So your components become subscribers, and they publish updates to the state. And when a component just has to fire off an action and say, the user selected rice, and now the store has selected item rice. And then over somewhere else in the code, you have a shopping cart component, which is subscribed to the state for the selected item. It's like a menu item, right? So then it gets notified. So it's like a publisher subscriber model for UI.
Okay.
And it works really well for simplifying state management in MVC applications. So,
okay, yeah, I'm taking a look here. So this year I did a, and I'm not in any way a JavaScripty type of person. Like I mentioned in a previous podcast, I'm more into like Elm is my thing. So we have something very similar to Elm, where we handle all side effects, and that includes state and sending information across the network. So the framework handles that, and it looks like from what I'm looking at here, it's kind of the same way as Redux, letting the framework handle the state, and you have a function callback of some sort to where you get, someone added rice to their shopping cart.
yeah.
So yeah, pretty exciting stuff. And all these look like they stem from Haskell's kind of state monad. It's not exactly the same thing, but using functional programming, reactive programming to do this sort of thing. And so I'll take a look more into this. This looks pretty neat, Ian.
Yeah, it is. It's great. There's Java implementations. There's all kinds of languages have this an implementation now for Redux. And this is where, again, you get into reactive programming with the streams, pipelines, where you're observing something and then you're mapping the result of that observation when you get notified, and then you're filtering or you're sorting, and then you're optimizing what only emit if it's distinct or something like that. And you use all this in the JavaScript world and Angular, TypeScript. You have RxJS.
Love
library.
RxJS.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
Good stuff. Lots of operators for doing chaining together observables, and it's really cool stuff. So
yeah, if I could be pushy with any JavaScripter, is just RxJS, because all handling all those events with that callback hell is just sheer punishment. Use functional programming.
Well, you can if it's just events though, you can use async await as well, or just promises.
Yeah, but that's hellish too.
Promises, they're a step forward, right? I think async await is better, but that's a more of a language construct. I think it's ES7 or 8. So it's something that's not going to be in every browser. But yeah, I agree with you guys that the RxJS stuff is.
But I would say even with async await and even with promises, wow, I know what you guys are talking about in JavaScript. And but yeah, just keep walking. Once you get into RxJS, the handling is just amazing. And I used it on a project called Operation Trivia Game, where I have ACA actors talking to WebSockets on web pages that display answers to a trivia game and ask questions and things like that. So it's the network message system dropping into the web page, and people are playing a video game on there.
Nice.
And as far as the JavaScript goes, couldn't have done it with RxJS. It really, really just cleans up your pages.
Yeah, and I've used it on an Angular project. I did like it a lot as well. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm looking at is for Polymer projects is Redux, Ian. So I've been looking into that.
Nice, nice.
Wow.
But and you could use RxJS with a Polymer app, but it's unlike Angular. It's not as obvious exactly where you'd put it.
Right.
Yeah, because Polymer is stateful, right? Like there's these are stateful components or not? Did I bark up the wrong
It's
tree?
really up to you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they do usually have properties, but any component is going to have some properties.
Okay.
And it has two-way data binding, but if you want, you can do one-way data binding. So it kind of depends.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. It really ties in nicely with immutability and one-way data binding, having some certain performance benefits over two-way. But yeah, it's amazing after you look at the before-after picture of an application that went through like a Redux transformation, and the components are so much simpler. Like the code you're writing for your UI is so much simpler than before because you're just waiting for the model to be set on the component. You don't have to do that work yourself.
Right.
It gets set from outside, and then you just deal with the events, which are themselves state updates. So it's like you fire off an event. It's a void function call. You don't have to wait for any result. There's no promises. There's nothing to deal with. Just fire off the event and let the store handle the rest. So
right,
simplifies code.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Anything else you're looking at this year, Ian?
That's a good question. More of the same. Like Angular 5 has just been released. Angular 6 is scheduled for March 2018.
Oh my God.
Pretty much doubling down on Angular TypeScript lately. So, and a little bit on the side. Got some Docker stuff I want to do too.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought up Docker. Yes.
Nice.
So yeah, go ahead and finish. I'll like to.
I'm just getting close to pulling the trigger on a migrating off Amazon Web Services onto a smaller host for cost savings. But the process taught me a lot about how to Dockerize my stack. Like moving your technology stack from one provider to another is not trivial, especially when there's multiple services involved. So it's been really interesting, and I've learned a lot, and it's getting there. Also, Docker for Mac. Oh my gosh, they just released an update. Takes advantage of the new Apple file system on SSD drives, so it's so much faster. It's like at least twice as fast for any kind of I/O now. So it's really fun to use.
Awesome.
Very cool.
I should mention that is one of my goals here. I have a good understanding about what Docker is, but I have not really used it yet. And actually, as I'm working on this, or actually, I'm not working on, but sort of updating this course, I'm wishing it was Dockerized all the labs. I'm like, and I don't have the time to Dockerize it now. But the next time I do this course, I'm Dockerizing all the labs. Because
When's your course?
It's Monday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
you don't have time.
No,
I was going to say it's a lot easier than I thought it would be.
That's what I was honestly, when I started out working on this, reviewing stuff, I was thinking about doing it, but then I realized I had more to do than I thought, and I was like,
Now I think you need to have time for mastering Docker. I mean, there's certainly, when you take a look at Docker, what you do to run and manage your containers, there's certainly a lot of bells and whistles involved in it. But for what you need now, I think it's a pretty nice entry point. And so Docker Compose is somewhat pretty easy, but you could definitely get into some advanced stuff. But absolutely, for what you need, it's been pretty pleasurable for me, at least. My problem is I'm prepping for a workshop over at DevNexus, and I've been trying to change the delivery system of it. And I'm stuck between either give them a complicated Docker setup or give them a virtual machine that's going to be obsessively large at 10 gigabytes, and the download's just going to just be horrifying. So I'm trying to decide where to go with that right now.
Well, they have some VMs that are like just a few megabytes, right? There's like some optimized CentOS image that's a tiny.
Oh yeah, I got a Ubuntu Mini, which works great with VirtualBox, and it works great with the VirtualBox extensions. That part's great. The problem is the crap I need to load on it makes it to 10 gigabytes. And yeah, so this is a Spark workshop. So the JDK, SBT, Scala, and Spark, all that added up with all the dependencies, because I wanted all the dependencies loaded up. That's where the hell arrives.
Right. Could you publish a Docker image to the Docker Hub, make it public, and let them download it from the lab?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but there's still going to be some Scala setup that they would have to do on their end. And so that's where, I'm trying to weigh every option. If I did that, then their setup is going to be a little bit longer. They would have to read a little bit more to do that setup. It's a no-win situation. It's a no-lose situation either, or as well, but definitely a no-win situation.
Okay.
As well. So I just have to decide how much of a pain in the ass am I going to be.
Well, yeah, this is a good segue, not segue, but a good a topic for us to discuss at the next newscast. You can tell us how it went.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
I'm curious.
Yeah.
And both Dano and I are going to be at DevNexus. If we played our cards right, we could actually coordinate a recording. Although I'm not sure how if we'll be able to fit it in. But
do you know the guys from Off Heap?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I know last year they had a live thing going.
Okay. Yeah, they have that as well.
Yeah.
So either we could have our own recording, or we can talk to the Off Heap guys. Either we could bring the Off Heap guys to us, or we could go to them and have a mega.
That might be a
mega recording.
Yeah, that might be a cool idea. We could have a simulcast. Yeah. In other words, it's the same episode for Dude from Podcast.
Right. Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I'll talk to them about that. That's a good idea. All right. So let's move on to some news topics. We'll start as usual with the UI tier and
top down.
Oh yeah. So to our audience, we tried getting a guest. One is flying today, so no dice, and one never returned our email. Shame. So no guest today. You're just gonna have to be stuck with us three.
Yeah, I know it's a tough life, but I'm sure we will have other guests in the future.
Yeah.
So, all right, UI tier. Polymer Decorators 1.0 has been released. These are a set of TypeScript decorators for Polymer 2.0 applications. And I've been I'm not a committer, but I'm sort of involved with testing this out and bugging them about things I think need to be added. But what's cool about this is it sort of supersedes a lot of different efforts to add TypeScript decorators to Polymer. And one of them is Polymer TS, which I took over recently, and that works great for Polymer 1 apps, but does not work for my computer just told me what time it is. But it doesn't work for Polymer 2 apps. And what's cool about Polymer Decorators is it's actually from the Polymer team. So going forward, we actually have TypeScript decorator support, out of the box from the Polymer team, which is great. So that's out now. Also, Polymer 3 was announced last year by the Google Polymer team, And basically, they are now sort of putting out new preview releases. They're going to try and do one every few weeks, I think. And just for those who don't know, who have not heard me ramble about Polymer, it's just a library that helps you write web components. And web components are a standard for writing reusable components that run in the web browser. So if you're familiar with JSF components, think of it as JSF components that run in the browser and are actually part of the HTML5 standard as opposed to part of the Java EE standard. Anyways, Polymer 3 is slated to come out, I think, was it next quarter, I think. And so they're putting out some builds now. And essentially, the main difference with Polymer 3 is that it's actually going to be using JavaScript modules. And that's kind of a big deal because Polymer has always been sort of an oddball because for dependency management, it uses HTML imports, which are really cool. It's a way to like import, JavaScript, CSS, and other assets using a link tag in your HTML. But the other browser vendors weren't into that standard, even though it did go through the standardization process. So it never took off. So Polymer is sort of this oddball of using HTML imports, whereas the rest of the JavaScript ecosystem uses ES6 modules. And so Polymer 3 is fully embracing ES6 modules. It's going to be an NPM. It was previously on Bower, but NPM has superseded Bower. So it's good. It's a good thing. It's basically just going to make Polymer fit better into the existing JavaScript ecosystem.
I thought Bower was layered on top of NPM.
Nope. It has its own repository.
Oh, okay.
Or own registry, I should say, not repository. But
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, they're sort of the same thing. It's just that NPM won. And there were some things about Bower that the Polymer team liked better. It had to do with the directory structure. I can't adequately explain it. And Yarn fixes that. So basically,
and Yarn is Facebook's NPM, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's NPM sort of the tool, and then there's NPM the registry. So
right.
Just like Gradle works with Maven registries, yeah, Yarn works with the NPM registry.
Correct.
To be fair, yes, Yarn fixed a problem, but in NPM 8, things have gotten a lot better with the package lock.json file in NPM. So you don't strictly need Yarn, but I'm sure it has other benefits too. I mean, as far as pinning dependencies, that issue's been fixed with the package lock.
Yeah, and I think that's been very helpful. I think there is another feature of Yarn that the Polymer team liked.
Okay.
That had to do with like I can't explain it. If I try to explain it, I'll screw it up. But
maybe flattening the dependency tree.
Yes, it is flattening.
Okay.
You'll get all these hipsters angry at you.
Yes.
That's just wrong. I'm gonna go eat my avocado toast in anger.
That sounds good.
That's right.
All right. Anyways, so that's Polymer 3. In JSF world, OmniFaces 3.0 came out. OmniFaces is sort of a Swiss Army knife of Java Server Faces applications. It's basically it's kind of hard to imagine starting a new JSF project without using it. So it just basically adds every little thing that you wish was there but isn't, and keeps you from having to write your own utility class over and over again. So 3.0 it's basically an upgrade release. The minimum requirements are Java 1.7. I'm sorry, Java 1.8, JSF 2.3.
I was about to have a tiny heart attack. Yeah. 7 is like 5 years ago. Yeah.
No. EL 3.0, Servlet 3.1, CDI 2, and optionally Bean Validation 2.0. So essentially, this is the Java EE 8 compliant release of OmniFaces. So
very cool.
There are some breaking changes and some new features as well, but you should check it out. It's in the show notes. And Ian,
sorry, I just wanted to clarify. I misspoke. It's not NPM 8, it's Node 8, but Node 8 ships with NPM 5. So since NPM 5
yes,
by default, any operation that modifies the package node modules directory generates a package.json file, which you can a package lock.json file, which you can commit to your Git repo, and that way you solve the it works on my machine problem that way. But so Yarn versus NPM, yeah, they both fix that problem in different ways.
Yeah, and you know what, we should clarify that. So if you're not really familiar with the whole issue with the NPM thing with the package lock, basically what could happen is, you know, whenever you specify a version in your package.json file, you specify a range for the version. You know, say change this minor one, use simfer to specify what the version is. So when you resolve it, you're going to get certain versions. But let's say someone else runs an npm install a month later, and some minor version has been released that fits the same pattern that you have in the package.json file, they're going to get a slightly different version. And that version will be different. And so everyone's going to end up with slightly different sets of dependencies. Sometimes they'll work, sometimes they won't. So the package lock file basically says, okay, this is the set that have been resolved to. These are the exact versions. So if everyone uses that same package lock file, they'll all have the exact same setup. So
that's right. Yes.
Okay.
And definitely spent more than a few hours trying to debug those it works on my machine problems. So, and especially if you do continuous integration, you have your build server pushing the builds to a deployment location, then yeah, you can run into that and it's not fun. So yeah, this NPM has improved a lot. Node has improved a lot. Nice to see. Maybe it was Yarn putting pressure on the Node community to fix those issues, but yeah,
well, that's open source. That's the great thing about open source. You don't fix an issue, someone else will, or you know, come up with something else.
Exactly.
And, kind of nice competition.
Yeah. Yep. And speaking of fixing issues, something else I've been dealing with working a lot with PrimeNG lately and loving it. I can't endorse it highly enough. Like the single component vendor approach for doing UI is so nice. Really, that was by far the best thing about working with JSF for so many years. Having one or two or few vendors, but knowing the components are all compatible and to an extent, at least from the same vendor, pretty much guaranteed. And sometimes across vendors too, which was nice. So PrimeNG 5.2.0 RC1 has been released and introduces a new turbo table component. So recently had an issue with the performance issue loading data in a P data table component. And this one is supposed to be about 20 times faster. So it's the previous component could render 5,000 rows of data, 8 columns in about 10 seconds, but Turbo Table does it in less than 0.5 seconds. So I'm looking forward to putting that through some test drive testing and see how it works. Some new components also added in this release, the key filter, which I had to write recently from scratch. Now it's part of PrimeNG, which is basically input validation, restricting the text to a regular expression pattern. So if you're doing any kind of regular expression validation, you can use the key filter with PrimeNG. Some other components is some CSS refactoring that's gone on to optimize the build, and that way you don't have to ship the whole PrimeNG CSS file. Save about 25K on your build process if you're doing Angular with PrimeNG. And other changes. So that's a new release from the Prime Faces team, PrimeNG 5.2.0 RC1. There was also a tweet yesterday from Chate from the Prime Faces team, and an important tweet about a security fix that just got addressed, the CVE EL injection vulnerability, which it piqued my interest. So I started looking into it.
Oh, I missed that one. Okay.
Yeah, it's in the notes. It's JSF issues. So basically, any component that uses a value, any JSF page uses value expression targeting a streamed content type that is vulnerable to this resource, this EL injection vulnerability. And they found like people are using it for doing what is it called? Bitcoin mining. So cryptocurrency mining, JavaScript injection via EL.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, so they're forcing the JSF page to load remote JavaScript, which is using the browser to mine cryptocurrency. So that's kind of funny, crypto jacking. But there's a couple of quick fixes. You can upgrade your Prime Faces dependency to 5.2.21 or 5.3.8 or 6.0. Or you can, if you're not using the stream content, you can add some Apache location directive that basically blocks any request to this JSF resource that handles this stream content. So yeah, PrimeNG fixed that issue. It's good to see security updates being applied regularly. Other news in the UI tier, Bootstrap 4 has been released. And interestingly, InfoQ had this article. There's some doubt whether or not we still even need Bootstrap at this point. So Bootstrap 4 has been released, but as they say, it emerges into a world with a dramatically different web than that which existed when Mark Otto made the first commit, leading some developers to question if it's even necessary. So as you guys may or may not know,
I was wondering that myself. Like every time I hear people talk about Bootstrap, I wonder if it's necessary.
Yeah, that's it. Now the CSS 3 has the Flexbox support, which allows you to create your own grid without requiring something like Bootstrap. But I mean, responsive design is still a big part of how we build applications for the web. So it might still be useful for a lot of teams who are based on Bootstrap. So Bootstrap 4 is out, and some new features include an improved grid system, which, by the way, is based now on Flexbox by default. Uses Sass instead of less. No more support for IE8, IE9, or iOS 6, and a rewrite of some JavaScript plugins, and it's now using REM units instead of PX for font size, I imagine. And that's it. So Bootstrap 4 is out, and that's it for me for UI updates.
Excellent.
Okay, sorry, had to unmute myself there. All right, so now on to Java EE. And as is usually the case recently, there is some news in the Java EE space. First of which is the joint community open letter on Java EE naming and packaging, which came out earlier this year, beginning of this year. And this was started a letter from Reza Rahman and other Java EE guardians, just to sort of push or influence the conversation on the naming of Java EE. So basically, Oracle last year decided to donate all the Java EE stuff to Eclipse, the Eclipse Foundation. So that project has been called EE4J. But the question has been, all right, well, that's cool, but what is the actual real thing going to be called when it's released? Is it going to be called EE4J? Is it going to be called Java EE9 when the next version comes out? And then also, what about the packages themselves? Like, can they keep Java X dot whatever? Do they need to change the EE4J or Eclipse dot whatever? Or, what is it going to be? So the letter from the Java EE Guardians basically said, we'd like to keep the Java EE name in there somewhere because otherwise it's going to be really confusing to people. And we spent a while discussing this to try and get a perspective of what developers thought. It's been hard enough with J2EE and Java EE. Having another name we felt would be just sort of more confusing. We also wanted to keep the Java X packages for newer releases as well. So, for example, if there's like a brand new spec added or a major new release, not a maintenance release, a major new release of one of the projects, we wanted to keep the Java X name, or Java X Enterprise, I should say. So that was sort of the goal. That was what the request was that was released. And Oracle did respond and basically said, we're not budging. So Oracle's stance has been, you need to pick a different name. You can't use the Java EE name And this, we're talking about beyond Java EE 8, where we're talking about whatever the next release is. And they said, you know, you can only use the Java X packages for existing specifications. So not a surprise, but that's sort of the deal there. So the links are in the show notes if you want to hear more about that stuff.
So question about that. What does this mean for the JCP? I mean, what if new specs come out, new standards get integrated in enterprise level Java standards, right?
Well, the key difference is basically that EE4J is not going to be following the JCP anymore. So they're going to establish their own sort of governing policies, which may be JCP-like. Who knows? I think it's actually a good opportunity to start and try something a little bit different. And something more agile that can release faster than the JCP does. So
what will the JCP be doing at this point? That's standard Java?
It'll still be doing maintenance releases for existing Java EE8 stuff. Okay. But then, yeah, the standard Java stuff. So all the Java SE, all the VM stuff, JDBC, JavaFX, all that kind of stuff will still be part of the JCP. So
got it.
But I think it's mostly Java SE stuff, because I know there is technically still Java ME stuff out there, but I don't know if that's really very relevant anymore. So
yeah, I kind of support, not to weigh in here without a just like that, but I support this decision in a way because in a way, like, it makes the JCP's job easier. They have less scope to manage, and it gives the enterprise community more control over Java EE, right, or E4J. My next question would be then, well, who's so if we have a parallel JCP kind of organization that's managing the EE4J, I mean, who's running that? Will that also be managed through like Google, IBM, Red Hat, all these companies, or?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I think they're still working that out. There's another link in the show notes that's called EE4J Current Status and What's Next, and that's from Mike. I cannot know if I can pronounce his last name, Milinkovic, who's the head of Eclipse, the Eclipse Foundation.
Okay.
So let's see, what does he say? Blah 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 blah. Well, they've already moved 9 projects over, which is awesome.
Wow.
Or they're moving them. They're not done yet. They're moving them in waves, and then they've got some other ones to do after that. A couple more waves. But let's see. I know there was something in here about the. Yeah. There's going to be a new spec process that is going to manage the evolution of these APIs in the future, and it hasn't been set up yet. As has been discussed in several venues, the new spec process is going to be bootstrapped with some rules around the continued use of the JavaX namespace. We're still working on what those rules are. In the meantime, if you really want to start prototyping some new APIs, you are free always to port the repos on GitHub. And their first goal is really just to get a compliant Java EE 8 release. So it's going to be a little while before they worry about they get the governing process down, because right now they're just going to trying to get something that builds on the new repos and runs essentially.
Right. And what about the TCKs, like the EE TCKs? Are those will those be made available as well to Eclipse Foundation? They are. Oh, great.
Yeah, they're open sourcing all the TCKs as well.
Nice. And so for new specs that come up in the next 5-10 years, for example, we have to write our own TCKs, or the new organization that's managing EE4J will be responsible for those, or will Oracle still have a role?
I think, well, the way it worked with the JCP was that the spec lead had to do the TCK. So I don't know if it's going to be an official spec lead for the new process,
Interesting.
But I imagine every spec will still need a TCK, some sort. But I have no idea how they're going to decide who needs to build it. So
interesting.
But really, all a TCK is, it's a test suite, right? it's a test suite, and the tests verify what the spec says. So if you were working on any new specification, you would want to write a good test suite anyways. So to me, it's just sort of part of the process. I mean, they made it a big deal that you had to license it, but it's really just a whole bunch of tests.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I think that definitely is a positive change here. Step forward for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. I think so. That's your is. Do you have anything else on that, or your E4J current status? Okay, I'll jump to the next news item. Talking about testing, Archillion Core 1.2.1 final has been released, and in this the release notes they mentioned that it's a minor release, so there's an enhancement, a couple bug fixes. But I just found it interesting because it's good to see there's still progress in the Archillion community, and also wanted to find out if Kito, you or Daniel are actually using Archillion at all. Have you guys had any?
A long time ago when I did Java EE development, but I've since moved on to the Scala space. But loved Archillion.
Cool,
absolutely.
I remember trying a lot to use it. It almost seems like every time I had an opportunity to use it, I'd try, and there'd be some reason why I couldn't. And I think there was one time where we were using a version of WebSphere, and it's not really that well supported with WebSphere. You know, there was always some issue. I mean, it always seemed like a great idea, but I don't think I ever got a good a good working use of it.
In the past. Oh, it's interesting. They have so many submodules that covers a lot of different testing scenarios. So, I mean, hopefully some teams are able to benefit. I had a similar experience, struggled to try to get the most value out of it that we could, but it's cool. I've also moved on, so I've been mostly still doing unit testing like crazy and TDD daily, but not doing any really as much Java-based TDD. But Karma, Jasmine, and these UI testing frameworks, it's a joy to use. I have to say, like there's still bugs and weird issues, and it's not always a seamless, smooth experience. But yeah, testing is great.
So I'm excited now. Whee! But so I do a lot of test-driven development training, and because the JavaScript stack has been and the Node stack has been, really taking over even the Java space. So I've been trying to support increasingly JavaScript testing. So I got to say they've done an outstanding job. I really like Sign-on or Sign-on. I think most people pronounce it Sign-on for test.
I really like that too. Yeah.
So that's been great as well. Istanbul for the test coverage. They really have a nice report. So sorry, I just had to chime in there.
Yeah, it's fine.
They have a really nice tool set.
I've enjoyed Chai too. So like when on Polymer projects I tend to use Chai as well. So yeah, good stuff out there.
Definitely. All right. That's it for our Java EE section. Now moving on to the persistence tier, moving top down as we do here on the newscast. So I picked out a few items this time for persistence tier news. So some interesting news from the Hibernate corner. Hibernate was picked as the project of the month on SourceForge. So I think it's pretty exciting, good for Hibernate, and obviously it's noteworthy enough that it was picked by their staff as a top project of the month for January.
I don't mean to be a hater here, but
here we go.
Why are they on SourceForge?
They've always been on SourceForge.
I know, but I didn't know it was still around. Actually, I think
SourceForge is just their delivery, right? Or am I mistaken?
Well, they're moving. Yeah, interestingly, they're moving their forum too. So like, they're all over the place. They just moved their community forum to a new platform called Discourse. It used to be on forum.hibernate.org, and that's still maintained. Now it's discourse.hibernate.org. So I guess they have a new forum software But
so
yeah.
this SourceForge was long before even Git was around or
Oh
anything.
yeah, I know.
But I thought this was just a delivery of binary.
Yeah, I mean, you're
downloads.
probably right too. It's probably also it might be a mirror or something else. Yeah, I remember when SourceForge was like GitHub. I just didn't. I think they let it languish too much, to be honest. I think they could have stayed relevant, but they just didn't really upgrade anything.
Right.
So.
There is a GitHub.com account for Hibernate, so I think they're also on GitHub.
Yeah.
And there's definitely activity on there. So yeah, maybe it's just like binary delivery.
Yeah, who knows?
Huh. Hey, free storage, use it.
Yeah, hey.
So other news, so Hibernate 5.9.0 CR1 has been released. And let's see, where's my notes for this one? What is new in Hibernate 5.9.0 CR1? There's a few bug fixes. Custom bridges with specific dependencies can now be used in a modular environment such as Wildfly. Hibernate Search JBoss modules are now distributed as Wildfly feature packs, which makes provisioning a Wildfly server with an upgraded Hibernate Search easier than ever. And there's some other updates as well. So it's a CR1 is the last opportunity for the community to test this version before Hibernate 5.9.0 beta 1. Before the 5.9.0 final release supersedes the beta 1. So Hibernate release is out there, 5.9.0 CR1. And moving on to now our middleware and microservices tier section. It's just a quick item here. Spring, trying to include some Spring news. So Spring 1.3.0 RC, Spring Cloud Data Flow 1.3.0 RC1 has been released. And this is an interesting project. If you're doing any cloud-based data processing, where was that GitHub page? So here's a project description. Spring Cloud Data Flow is a toolkit for building data integration and real-time data processing pipelines. Pipelines consist of Spring Boot apps built using the Spring Cloud Stream or the Spring Cloud Task microservice frameworks. And it supports a local server, Cloud Foundry, Kubernetes, Apache Yarn, or Apache Mesos.
Great.
That looks pretty cool.
Right on. Well, we have a time crunch limit at the bottom of the hour. So we should probably wrap up.
Yeah, just a quick one more thing here. Moving on. Some of our picks here for the podcast. The Scrum Alliance published a State of Scrum report for 2017, 2018. And this is interesting. Just some salient points here, key facts from this report. When did it happen? In the fall 2017, there were over 2,000 Scrum Alliance members who responded to this survey. 91 countries were represented, 27 industries. And this is showing departments, everyone who's using Scrum within their organization. IT was using 39% of the respondents were in IT, 27% in software development, 11% in product development, and everything else is kind of below 10%. And interestingly, departments other than IT using Scrum, operations or production, 42%. Research and development, 31%. Sales and marketing, 25%. And even human resources was at 19% using Scrum. So it's interesting to see.
Fascinating.
Wow, that is really interesting.
The reach, for sure.
Hey, you know what? Since the reason I mentioned the bottom of the hour, I think Ian, you had a conference call. So
yeah, I think I've got a little bit of leeway. So don't worry.
Okay, great. Yeah, okay. So we could still continue. Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up with this one, and it's great since you have a little bit more time than Ian, is did it mention anything about customization of Agile? Like how it seems that a lot of companies take a Scrum, take a XP, and dump the things that they don't like, and really just kind of form an Agile onto themselves.
Yeah, it said 94% of the respondents use Scrum in their Agile practice. Of that, group, 78% use Scrum with other approaches, 16% use Scrum exclusively.
Oh, okay.
With other approaches. Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting too that, you know, back when XP got all popular and the Agile Manifesto came out, there were a couple different processes, right? Now it just seems like everyone's like, oh, do you do Scrum? And when they say Scrum, they mean some variant of some Agile process.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily mean, you know, Scrum per se. And I've also been, there was a contract I was on last year. It was at a large insurance company, and they did Agile. Like, they went through all the motions. They had their daily Scrum. They had a Scrum Master, but it was so, like, it was a very strange variation. Like, in stand-up meetings, the product or the project managers weren't allowed to talk. Like, you weren't allowed to talk to them to say,
wow.
Like, there was just all this weirdness, and it was not efficient. And so, you know, I wonder. I know this would be very difficult to actually measure, but what percentage of all these people that think they're doing Scrum are actually doing something that's working?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so,
and
as far as
oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that I just find humanity interesting, and I don't mean to bring up the other topic that I'm about to say, but kind of like a religious practice. You know how we have all the major religions, they kind of like diverse out into their own, just because they interpret things or translate holy texts in their sort of way. And I love drawing the analogy, like, how do humans do with software practices? Like, all Scrum is encoded, XP is encoded, and all these processes are encoded. And I always find it, you know, exciting just to see how people do things. And I've been in a stand-up meeting. What's Scrum supposed to be, like 10 minutes or 5 minutes?
I don't even know.
It's like it's supposed to be something that you stand up and have a 5-minute meeting. I'd been in one that was like an hour and a half. And you know, those horror stories of, like, you're not allowed to talk to the project manager. Right. And it's just fascinating to me just to watch humanity take something that is good, like a software practice, and just for either good or evil, or just something nonsensical, change it into something so weird.
Yeah, I think to play devil's advocate here for a sec, I mean, because we use a kind of modified Scrum as well, and I think it's partially out of necessity, because you have offshore teams, you have distributed teams, right? So you have like only so much time where you can all meet. So I mean, yes, if you do a pure Scrum meeting, and you also need an update from an offshore team or something, like, you have to combine the stuff together. So. But as far as Kito's point, the not being able to talk to the project or product owners, that's an interesting one. It reminded me of this. There's this joke that people use to help communicate what is Agile and how the Scrum process works. And it goes like this. A chicken and a pig are walking down the road. The chicken says, "Hey, pig, let's open a restaurant." And the pig says, "Okay, what should we call it?" And the chicken says, "How about ham and eggs?" And then the pig thinks for a moment and says, "No, thanks. I'd be committed, but you'd only be involved." So,
ooh, nice.
So you have, you know, this idea in Scrum of the project stakeholders, different stakeholders, the different levels of involvement in a project, right? But typically the project, I think the product owners and development team, of course, the Scrum Master. These people are the pigs. These guys have their bacon on the line. You know, they're really responsible for the success of the project. Whereas, like, the executives and customers and management, maybe other stakeholders, are more like the chickens. They're involved, but they're not committed. So I found that interesting. You mentioned that, Kito, like the product owner was not allowed to talk, but again, people have their own variations. An interesting point from this InfoQ article, they interviewed the person from the Scrum Alliance, and they asked, so why is Agile successful? Why is Scrum successful? And let's see, what was the response was, the question was, what is driving the agile transformations in organizations? And the response was, Lisa Hirschman writes, the alternative to agile just doesn't work. And I thought that's a really succinct way of putting it, because it's true. If you've tried waterfall-based project management, if you've been involved in other ad hoc management styles, it's very difficult to. There's already so many unknowns and unpredictability, right, in software development, that agile seems to be the best approach for sure.
So oh, go ahead, Kito.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think also, I mean, things have sped up a lot. So you can't wait like, a year to see your application.
Right.
I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention that I'm not a firm believer, but I don't know, maybe I would switch it to firm believer. There's a practice. I don't know if any of you guys have done behavior-driven development, where it ties it to TDD.
Yeah.
And BDD is about working on specifications. And with the specifications, you have to work with a product owner. There's no way around it. Like you have to communicate with them. The developer and the testers have to communicate with them and work things out. And it's just amazing that hearing some of those stories where no one's allowed to communicate. It just sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I've always wanted to work on a pure BDD project. I've used some frameworks before, but I'm sort of on running specifications, so so it's not the same.
Right.
So.
Sure.
All right, let's move on. I had one pick, which is unrelated to programming per se, but it's still technology related. And this is the TWiT network, This Week in Tech. Have either of you heard of this? It's a podcast network.
Cool.
Yeah.
Highly recommended. Leah Laporte is like the main dude.
Right.
But I listen to a lot of their podcasts. They also have video versions, and they do sort of like we're doing. They do live ones, but they actually have viewers, and they do podcasts. But they have a podcast on like pretty much every sort of pop tech thing. So there's a Mac Break Weekly for Apple stuff. There's This Week in Google for Google stuff. There's a Windows one as well. They also have other shows like iOS Today. And then they also have This Week in Tech, which I think is sort of everything.
Right.
I'm partial to Mac Break Weekly and This Week in Google, but they have lots of different shows. So highly recommended if you want sort of the more sort of tech news view on things. So
nice.
Very cool.
Yeah. You had a pick there, Dano?
So I just wanted to mention, as a desktop manager, I despise GNOME as a Linux desktop manager. I do like Xmonad, although I'm not quite that advanced yet, and it's kind of a pain. But I stumbled upon this, and I'll go ahead and add something else. But Ubuntu Mate as a desktop manager is extremely lightweight, extremely an attractive desktop manager. So if you are a Linux person and you've not seen that yet, you may want to check that out. And as I was mentioning with Ian, another one that you may find if you're going to be doing some virtual machines with Linux, there is an Ubuntu Mini that you can do where everything is scrapped out except for the very, very basics. And from there, you can add on whatever you want. So perfect for a virtual machine environment.
Yes. Looks awesome.
Cool. All
right. So let's finish up the hour-long plus newscast with just a few events. NG Europe is taking place on February 1st and 2nd. That's for you Angular folks in Europe. That's in Paris, France.
Nice.
Dev Nexus. Hey, you should check that one out, Ian.
That's coming up really fast, though.
Yeah, you'd have to leave next week. Actually, probably by the time this podcast comes out, it may have already passed. We'll see. Dev Nexus a little bit later, February 21st to 23rd in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's one where you can catch me and Dano. I'll be talking about effective TypeScript and I think Selenium.
Yeah, I saw you on the
stuff.
schedule for Selenium, I think.
Yeah. So you're doing a Spark workshop, and what else?
I'm doing a Spark workshop, and I'm going to be talking really fast about Scala in 1 hour.
All right, cool.
Yeah. I was thinking of doing it to a song if I have time, kind of a country song.
Oh my God.
Start off with, well, you get that. And just
that would be very entertaining. I
Yeah.
never would have thought of that. This is why I like having you around, Hannah.
Oh man, if I could pull that off, man, that would be kind of
that would be impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
Next up, NGConf, April 20th to 18th to 20th in Salt Lake City, in the US. I will be at that one. I will not be presenting. Unfortunately, they did not accept my proposals, but I will be with the Prime Tech guys at the Prime NG booth.
All right.
So that'll be cool. So I will be at that conference, and that's a great conference too if you're into Angular. And then there's the Great Indian Developer Summit, which is April 24th to 27th in Bangalore, India, and I will be at that for the first time ever. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm doing about 20,000 sessions. So if you want to go to that conference, look at the show notes or look it up. It's GIDS is the shorthand.
Huge conference.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it. I'm really looking forward to it. So, then May 16th through 18th, in the French Riviera, France, there's Riviera Dev. I don't know anything about this, but our last guest mentioned it. So it's another development day in the French Riviera. So that sounds pretty cool.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, I'll just finish up with No Fluff, Just Stuff. We got Madison, February 23rd, 24th. Minneapolis, March 2nd to 4th. Boston, March 16th through 18th. St. Louis, 6th through 7th of April. And Reston, April 20th through 22nd. Since we're a new year and sometimes we get some new listeners on here, No Fluff, Just Stuff is a conference that travels around the United States and presents with top-notch speakers and a wide range of topics, usually some new and interesting topics. And so come check this out.
All right, cool. All right, well, I think that just about does it. Happy January to everybody. Thanks a lot for listening in. And I think we'll be doing this again next month. I think we're getting into a rhythm.
Yeah, awesome. And hopefully we'll have some guests. We had a few lined up, but just this month was kind of hard to do.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for listening. All right.
All right.
Adios.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Right on.
All right.
Okay, guys.
Let you guys know when we get this up. Enjoy your meeting, Ian.
It's a wrap.
And God, this is awesome, guys. We actually this is probably the best executed one we've done in a long time. Because
there was no mic episodes.
Yeah, no mic episodes. We all showed up. We actually had the show notes pretty much done. So
very cool.
Kudos.
Yeah.
Cheers.
All right.
See you guys.
Cool.
Talk to you guys later.
All right, later.
Bye.